What's going on, y'all? Hope all is well. Another episode of Combos with the CFP Mario Payne in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida. Before we get started, as always, like, subscribe, share our channel as we continue to grow our YouTube. We definitely appreciate the support. But today, we got to talk about IPOs. I had a conversation with my client today. Should I get into this IPO? Why? Why not? Is it a long-term play? So we want to talk about what an IPO is and what this company did today because they got to the bag. And my profiteers, you're probably familiar with the company. They're called Kava. And man, are they a good place to eat food. Probably seen them as we kind of scroll down, right? They have bowls. They got bowls if you like Mediterranean style food, if you want to spice it up. You can definitely spice it up. A healthy alternative, you probably see them in airports and other places, but man, their food, in my opinion, is delicious. Now, I'm not the biggest falafel fan in the world, but definitely I do like Mediterranean style food, and it doesn't get any better in my eyes when it comes to Kava. So, what did they do today? They went public, and they had a pretty hefty first day. Yahoo Finance. Kava on Thursday made its public debut on the New York Stock Exchange, and it looks like Wall Street investors initially took a big bite. Shares of the Mediterranean fast casual restaurant chain closed at $43.33 a share, based on a valuation of $4.8 billion. Now, this company is not even profitable, which means more money comes out of their pocket than into their pocket. But in one day, they went from, I don't really know what they're worth, to a valuation of $4.8 billion. And that's almost twice the company priced on Wednesday evening at $22 a share, which is $2.5 billion. Just imagine in one day you have an investment, literally doubles overnight. Doesn't happen all the time, really doesn't happen at all, but Kava getting to the bag. So as we had a conversation with the client, went over the pros and cons. And with the pros and cons, the great thing about an IPO is that it goes up. The not so good thing about an IPO is that most investors can't buy it until 9:30, and when it actually hits the market, it spikes up. So you're going to get it at an inflated price. How an IPO works. An initial public offering, IPO, is when the private firm sells its first shares on the New York Stock Exchange to the general public. So we went from being a private company to being a public company in one day. That is your initial public offering. For the first time, I'm initially, if I could talk, offering my company to the public, IPO. In essence, an IPO indicates that a company's ownership is changing from private to public. As a result, the IPO process is known as becoming public. So you're becoming public. We had an ETF that launched last year in 2022, February to be exact, right? Let be. Now, that was an ETF, so it wasn't like a IPO where, it's going public from a sense of investors can get into the pre-IPO, but it went from a private fund to a public fund. And now anybody and everybody can, invest in that fund and prayerfully make money over time as the fund has performed, which is pretty good. Didn't lose as much as the market did last year. And this year we're doing a pretty cool job. So we went public with our fund. The company went public. Now, we don't got a $4.8 billion valuation, but, we're good. We're good. So that's what an IPO is. But the essence of our conversation was from a long-term standpoint, because we want to be long-term investors. We have good days in the market, bad days. On average, the average IPO makes 16% that day. So if it hits the market at $100, at the end of the day, it averages $116. But most investors, when they buy it at $9.31, when it opens up, they don't get that $100 price. They might get at $108, $110, $120. Then it goes down to $116. You've actually lost money. So unless we're able to get it before it actually hits the market, that one-day surge really doesn't help us because as regular, everyday investors, not saying anybody is regular, but our everyday investors, we don't get to really get into the pre-IPO. We have to buy it at 9:30 when the market opens. So from a long-term standpoint, is IPOs or investing in IPOs worth the risk from an investment standpoint, or should we go with our Been here, done that companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, companies of that nature that are quote unquote blue chip. Well, let's look at the data. And this is actually from NASDAQ.com. So straight from the source, because as we go public, we can go public either on the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, of course. They actually have other exchanges as well. They have one in Chicago where you can launch, but typically it's on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ. But as we can see here, over 3 years, so here to the right, and this I know lines, but the top part, basically in the green, 29% of the time, 3 years after that company goes public. So they had that great first day, right? Averaging 16% that first day. 3 years later, what is the return of our money? Well, 29% of the time, right? 3 out of 10 times, that company's return is 10% or more. So 10 times a company has went public. 3 of those companies out of 10 has an annual return of 10% or more. So basically beating the market as the market averages in between 8 to 9% a year. On average, you have good years and bad years, of course. Last year, horrible year. This year, great year so far. But on average, 9 to 10%. Well, 8 to 9%, my apologies. On the flip side, 64% of the time, companies are down, and they're down by more than 10%. So again, 10 companies, 3 companies did good, the other 6 companies did bad. So I had 3 that made 10%, 6 that lost 10%. Profiteers, I've lost money. So historically, as a long-term investor, IPOs, after they first pop, really isn't the best investments compared to other investments. I mean, averages are averages, right? The law of averages. So the question is, should we invest in an IPO? Well, profiteers, the data says, I don't think so. The reason why, if I have 10 opportunities to make money with the IPO and 3 do well and 6 do bad, law of averages say not so much. Now, you could say, but if an IPO pops, I might get 100, 200, 300%. If I make 300% and 6 of them lose 10%, I still made money. That's true. And that's where your risk tolerance comes into effect. As an investor, how much risk we put into from an investment standpoint. If you're more aggressive, a more risky investor, then yeah, you might want to look into IPOs. If you're more conservative, more long-term, more want the law of averages to work out in your favor, IPOs might not be the way to go. Different strokes for different folks. If you're able to get into the pre-IPO or be able to buy that IPO before it hits the market, that might be something to think about, because again, if the first day it always averages 16%, always averages, meaning good days, bad days, depending on the IPO, you might be in good shape. But that's a risk that you have to be willing to take with your risk tolerance profile. Hope that helps though. We learned about IPOs. Kava, salute to y'all. The next IPO that comes out, we'll see that happens. As always, stay healthy, be blessed. Let's make some painful profits together, y'all. Peace.
And you just wanna get paid, tired of making the money mistakes. Make a payment on your bills and you still late, yeah. Painful profits to help you seek change.